The government has set the threshold at $40 an hour. That's full-time hour, 8 hours a week, 40 hours a week, whatever is full-time. And if you have an employee and they work more than 40, the employer has to pay them overtime or bringing them in on holidays. They have to do that. That's what the non-exempt means. So therefore, these people down here, if you're an exempt employee working making $50,000 a year, it doesn't matter if you're working 30 hours a week or 100 hours a week. You make $50,000. That's it. And you work to get your work done. So it does sound better up here. But what employers do is they try to keep their employees' hours down so that they don't hit that full-time mark. Because even if a part-time employee hits it, they have to pay them more. And in fact, if they hit the full-time mark, they have to give them the standard benefits of healthcare and all that kind of stuff. You guys familiar with Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act? I mean, one of the things that they were touting, it did some good things. You know, it kept people on their parents' health insurance until age 26. I know that benefited my kids big time. But it also, what it did, they said that they were going to get like 20 million more people health insurance. And the way they were going to do that, to get the employers to pay for it, is to reduce a full-time work week from 40 hours to 32 hours. And so suddenly all these people that were in the 32 to 39 range would now qualify for employer-provided benefits, health insurance. Well, what do you think employers do? They had employees that they were keeping under 40, and these employees were fine with that. They didn't care. They were actually able to make ends meet having one job, working 38, 39 hours a week. Now, their employer is cutting them back to 30, 31 hours a week to keep them under 32. And suddenly all these employees had to go get two jobs where before they only had one. So employers, they basically didn't say, no, I'm not coughing up for the health insurance, but that's the big thing, is non-exempt is that overtime pay and then the things that kick in. So what is the benefit here? These are the benefits. This is what will kick in if you're the full-timer in the hourly, but it's considered, a non-financial form of compensation for a salaried employee. If you're a salaried employee, you get a health insurance plan. You get typically a retirement plan. Employers kick in. You get paid sick leave. It's not just leave without pay when you're sick. You get paid vacation leave. These are pretty good things. And in fact, this stuff adds up when you think about it, to the point where, just to kind of give you an example, if you're making $50,000 out here at SCC, they give you all this and even some more perks as well. Their non-financial forms of compensation out here at SCC total up almost $30,000. So that would be like making $80,000 a year if you actually had to pay for all this stuff yourself. So that's what the real benefit of being a salaried employee is. Plus, a lot of times, when things get busy, you just know you got to kind of grind it out and do it. But most of the time, you get your work done, and if it's 40 hours, it's 40 hours. So here's the thing about those benefits. Those benefits are actually designed to attract people and to keep people on the job. They're really not designed to motivate people to do good jobs. That health insurance, that vacation, the sick leave, the retirement plan, they're designed to get you to apply, and then once you're there, they're designed to keep you there. And this is where you might hear people bitch and moan about their jobs. They hate their jobs, and then somebody says, well, why don't you quit? Oh, I can't quit. The benefits are too good, and that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what they're there for. They're designed to keep you from quitting. So they don't motivate. So here's the thing. HR, did everybody get all that? I mean, basically, just an employee retainers designed to keep and attract and keep employees. That's the big thing. HR people have to be considered about motivating. And motivation means you're happy with your job on here. Now, I can't remember. I get confused with my Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Did we watch a 9-minute video on Apple Tree Calling Center in this class? Okay, so I want you to kind of remember that one on here. Because one of the things about motivation is employee morale. That is what is key to job satisfaction. Keeping your employees happy. Happy employees mean high morale. They're happy, they like to go to work, and such. Low morale, complete opposite, and it's obviously not happy employees. So here's what you get. If you got high morale, you got a high level of productivity out of your employees. They simply just perform better. They do more. They go above and beyond. Go back to that theory X, theory Y. Well, it's total theory Y when you got high morale. They seek out responsibility and stuff. And in fact, they don't quit. They're loyal to the company as well. This is where I want you to kind of remember that apple tree. If you remember, one of the things that an unexpected benefit that they got out of changing their methods was the fact that customers were happy. When employees are happy, the customers are happy simply because they're treated better. Low morale means people are calling in sick. They just don't feel like going to work, and stuff. Or they simply just quit because they've just fed up with the way they're treated at work. And looking at that calling tree, that calling center, Apple Tree, they said that they've had over 100% turnover. Over 100% of their employees, they hire them and they're gone within a certain number of time. That's huge. And it was all due to low morale. So they changed their methods. They created more ways for job satisfaction. It raised morale, so they didn't have to hire as many people. And one of the things that happened, they only had 18% turnover. When you don't have to hire as many people, you get your employees more experienced and they get better at their job. Or if you're constantly having to hire people, you have to train them and all this kind of stuff. So again, customers, when you got employees that don't like their jobs, they don't treat customers very well. Customers stop coming. You got employees that like their jobs, they treat customers, and the customers stick with you. And we're going to learn this in marketing in the next unit. It is way more expensive to get that first customer than it is to keep a customer. So that's a huge benefit too. So what do employees do to incentivize high morale? There are actually benefits that are included in that package that we saw, health insurance and stuff, that are not just employee retainers, they're actually morale boosters. They're things that are designed to raise employee morale, aspects of the job. So here's the difference. But you see here, these things I said were employee retainers, those are called fringe benefits. Up here. The things that actually boost morale, those are things that are called soft benefits and stuff. And every business is a little different. But these things, I know you might not be able to read it right here. Soft benefits, they help balance life and work. That's what that says. Soft benefits help balance life and work. So we watched, in the last unit, we watched Google, right? What they do for their employees. You remember that one? Where Google basically will transport them. Google provides shuttle service for all their employees, so they don't have to go find parking in downtown San Francisco. They shuttle them in. That's a soft benefit. Google's providing it. Google provides breakfast, lunch, and dinner free for all their employees. They don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Google lets you bring your pets to work, so you don't have to worry about them staying home and go to doggy daycare and stuff like that. Well, it's a soft benefit, It's helping to balance that life and work and stuff. It's also making Google a whole lot more money too, even though they're paying for it. The employees stay at work longer. They don't have to worry about their pets. They get all their meals provided. They get free shuttle service so they can actually work on the shuttle. They don't have to pay attention to traffic, all this kind of stuff. But yet it's a soft benefit. So remember that word there. All right. Next little effort thing we're going to talk about. We're kind of looking at the hiring process of business, of what HR does. And one of the things is getting the right people on here. Now, if you remember, we did that team player assessment, Well, that was designed to find out if you are going to be a qualified candidate. They give you these assessments. The book talks about Myers-Briggs and that kind of stuff, and there's a ton of them out there that do it. But they'll give you an assessment. They will also have you fill out the application. The application is designed to see if you meet the minimum qualifications on there. But every job has certain qualifications, certain minimum qualifications. So let me ask you, businesses have to have both of these types of things when they are trying to recruit people. Obviously, well, let's put it in this perspective. You're a new business. You know you need employees. You know what kind of employees, but you don't have them yet. So you've got to basically attract them to apply for your business. So which one should come first? You post a job announcement, or do you write the job description? Which one would you do first?
Job listing and announcement.
Okay, the job listing. Everybody agree with that?
I would do the description.
Okay, the description. Well, what's the difference here? So here's the big difference. This is what each one does, right? A job announcement is when you basically post that job is available, is open. However, you've got to make sure that the right kind of people apply for it. So therefore, you really have to define that job first. So the job description should be done first. And before you even start posting announcements, make sure the job description is thoroughly written on there. Now the thing about a job description, it is a formal document. It's not a legal document, but it can be used in legal situations for legal purposes, especially when there's a dispute between labor and management over how the job is performed, or if an employee feels like they're being asked to do too much than what they were hired to do. Well, everything needs to be spelled out in that job description. And I mean everything. I'll just kind of give you an example. This is what a job description should look like. It should definitely have the job title. Every employee needs a title for what their job is. The thing about job titles is they kind of, sometimes when a job doesn't have very good pay, they'll make the job title sound pretty important, and that kind of makes people feel important even though they don't have to say what kind of salary they're making. And in fact, this was years ago, I don't think the insurance company still exists. There was an insurance company here in Lincoln, it was downtown, and their revenue was really going down. They weren't making as much money, and so they couldn't afford to give their people raises. So what they did was they bumped them up and they started giving them assistant vice president, and these titles. There were so many vice presidents in this company, but they hardly made any money on that. The job title matters. For instance, out here, you walk into any one of the offices, like the dean's office or down in administration and stuff, there's a lot of secretaries. Well, they're not called secretaries anymore, they're administrative assistants. And in fact, there's administrative assistant 1, assistant 2, assistant 3, and each one has a different pay scale on there. So therefore, when somebody gets, a promotion, they get more money and they get a higher title. It makes them feel more important as well too. But it always tells you who you report to. That way, if there's a dispute there. But if you're a salaried employee, that $50,000 a year, typically it's not just going to say $50,000 a year. If you're an hourly wage, it will say, $25 an hour. But a salaried employee is actually going to have a range. And so let's say 50, you might say 40,000 to 60,000. You'll have a range. You never want to specify one exact salary. And the reason you don't do that is because when you post that job announcement, you will get multiple people applying for the job that will have different levels or different degrees of qualifications. Now, if you only have one salary for that job, you might get somebody that doesn't quite have enough qualifications, but yet you feel, man, this person just fits in with the company. You know they're a good fit, but yet you can't justify bringing them in at that 50,000. Or you might get somebody that just has huge qualifications and you really, really want them, but 50 is not enough for them. Well, that's when you got a range right there for that. Bring that other person in at 40, bring the other person in at 60. Always specifies the hours. Thing is, remember salary, it doesn't really matter. And I'll give you an example. Mine out here looks a lot like this, has all this stuff on it. But for hours, it basically says Monday through Friday, up till 10 p.m. if needed, and Saturdays and Sundays if needed. It says that on there. So basically the entire week is up to that. Now obviously I don't have to do that, but on certain occasions I do. It's just part of being an exempt employee. Then you talk purpose of position, what the key responsibilities, duties, but it's all spelled out. So therefore, an employee can't say that's not part of my job, or the employee says, or the supervisor says, this is part of your job, you were hired to do this, that kind of a thing. All right, so where would you list those benefits I talked about? Would you put them in the job description, or do you put them in the job announcement? Remember what I said benefits are? They are employee retainers. And what's the definition of an employee retainer? To attract. Obviously, you put them here. They got to be spelled out, but you definitely want to list them here because they're also designed to attract people and bring them in. So you always put the benefits in there as well. Okay, I want to talk about some laws when it comes to recruiting and when it comes to having employees in general. So I'll rest my vocal cords if you want to write this stuff down. Believe it or not, you might see it. It's up to you. I guess these laws came about mainly because of discrimination was the biggest thing. And such. There's a whole other law that I want to get into when we talk about unions and such. But for the most part, when it comes to employees, we're talking about discrimination. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is probably the big one. And obviously, that historically that was the civil rights movement and such. And they came up with the Civil Rights Act, prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin. So it's a huge act. How do you enforce it around the country? Well, that's also where the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission came from, the EEOC. That's the federal agency that enforces all the laws that prohibit discrimination in the workplace. Now, they don't actually go out and monitor the workplaces and stuff like that. You, the employee, have to go to them and tell them what has happened to you, and then they determine whether or not it rises to the level that is actual discrimination on there. I think ours is down in the county city building as far as the EEOC, but the thing is, you actually have to go to them. Then they start looking at all the different types of acts or laws, basically, for the different areas that people can be discriminated against. So remember that application that we looked at? Well, asking about somebody's disability is right there. It's called the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, prevents discrimination against people with disabilities. That thing on the application, if I recall, said any physical disabilities. You can have physical disabilities that might not be outwardly apparent or something. How do you know if someone is deaf until you realize they can't hear you? That kind of a thing. But even then, there are other types of disabilities that might not even be physical and such. Most of the time they are in one degree or another. But you would be surprised at the types of physical disabilities that employers have to provide accommodations for on there. Like I said, age discrimination. I think that one didn't come about until like 1967. That's how long age discrimination has been going on. Outlaws based on discrimination on age. Most discrimination is against people 40 or over. It's not younger people that are being discriminated against. And what they found was that employers were actually avoiding hiring people 40 or older. So let me ask you, why would it be more beneficial for an employer to hire someone your guys' age than someone my age? Why would it be more beneficial from an employer standpoint?
Older person's gonna retire sooner.
That might be a benefit. They'll be off the payroll sooner, where you guys would be on it for another 40 years, maybe.
We just got out of school, so there's different things that we just.
Yeah, think about that. You guys don't have the experience, that I have over my 40 years of working and such. So therefore, I'm going to want a higher salary than that. So by bringing in younger people, they don't have to pay them as much on there, and that's one of the things that they do. And because of that, they discriminate against the 40 and older crowd more than they do the younger crowd. And then the Equal Pay Act, we see this a lot, where it prohibits wage discrimination simply based on if you're a man or a woman on there. But these are the types of things that HR people have to be aware of to make sure that they don't, break them. Now, I'm going to pop out of this because I got a quick video. Let me quickly plug in. It's just late. It came in. I was actually kind of shocked when I found that this is classified as a disability that employers have to accommodate for.
Oh, hey man, I noticed you haven't been in the office much.
I've been missing the office, but my long COVID symptoms have been making it hard for me to work in an office setting.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What's better about being at home?
Just the little stuff. I can keep the lights a little bit dimmer, and I can take more frequent breaks from my computer screen.
I bet if you asked the boss, she would let you make some adjustments to your office.
No shot. The boss is not that agreeable.
Actually, she has to. Long COVID symptoms can be considered a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act. That means the EEOC is in your corner.
That doesn't make sense. I don't have a disability. And what even is the EEOC?
Technically, you could qualify. In 2021, the EEOC, alongside the Department of Justice and Health and Human Services, issued guidance for how long COVID fits into the ADA's definition of disability.
That's great, but how does that help me with my boss?
The EEOC enforces federal workplace discrimination laws. So if she denies your claim, you could have grounds for a charge. Oh, hey, man.
That's actually the EEOC YouTube channel, but I did not realize that even long COVID is classified as a disability on there, and employers have to accommodate that kind of stuff, but they do. All right. Last but not least, stuff you'll see on the test is unions and collective bargaining. You know, I saw something just in Saturday's paper. It kind of struck my eye, I guess, before we get into this. But you know, we've heard about this stuff in the past as far as it goes with the longshoreman strikes and things like that. But Trader Joe's employees are in a union and stuff. And in fact, they're not too happy because they actually want to get out of the union. And the people that are running the union won't let them get out of the union. So I didn't realize how hard it is to dissolve a union once you unionize at a place on there. And I'm going to have to look more into that, see if I can't bring it into class. But here's kind of where it all started. I guess it kind of set the stage with unions. If you go back, why did we need unions in the first place? And going back to like the turn of the century, if you remember how we started this unit with showing Henry Ford, you know, just trying to work his employees to the bone. He didn't care if they couldn't keep up with the assembly line. You know, he would show them the door, and there were plenty more people waiting to take their place simply because money motivates, the pay motivated. So working conditions didn't matter at all. It was you either put in that 8 to 10 hour day, and if you couldn't keep up, you got fired on there. Obviously not too motivating, but it got to the point with around the country that workers started to revolt basically and stuff, and they wanted better pay, better conditions and such, and basically they wanted more power over their jobs. So unions started to form, and obviously employers did not want the unions to form. And the big good employers, if you remember that video, they kind of mentioned, but like Ford and these big places, they actually had their own police force. Some might even call it an army, their own military militia that would keep the unions out or keep them from forming. And it was literally warfare. You know, there was a lot of people getting killed and arson and that kind of stuff in some of the bigger cities. And it was getting out of control. So eventually the government got in, and the Labor Relations Act of 1935 was signed into law by Franklin Roosevelt. It's also known as the Wagner Act. Anytime they mention somebody's name, that's usually the senator that proposed it on there. But one of the things that this did was it gave more power to the employees, more power to the private sector employees. It said that they have a right to organize into unions. These businesses cannot actively keep them from doing it. No more, you know, bloodshed, hopefully. It said that they have a right to engage in collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is basically when management sits down and employee and workers sit down and they basically go back and forth to work out the details until they come to an agreement. And it says that they can actively take part in strikes and that kind of stuff. You know, before I move off of this act is saving a lot of people's jobs today that aren't even in unions. You know what it's doing? Have you ever seen the people that go out on their social media accounts and complain about their jobs, complain about their bosses, that kind of stuff, and then they go and they get fired for doing it? You see that, right? They're getting their jobs back, they're getting back pay because of this. The Labor Relations Act of 1935 says that you have a right to complain about your working conditions. You have a right to complain about your pay. So this one is helping social media out, of all things. Here's what they negotiate for. They negotiate for compensation. They negotiate for their workload. Those are the big two things. We talked about compensation, the pay, the benefits, and such. We talked about working conditions, how many hours, how much do you have to work, and stuff. So by what unions do, and I guess I should pop out and go to the longshoremen. I want to do that real quick, and then we'll come back to this. Because I just found, this strike just happened with the longshoremen. And so this is one of the guys, he's just kind of posting on social media, just like I described.
With that picture, we've had her for years.
All she wants to do is keep her job so she can keep making
One more
millions.
week of this.
Feels like a lot of insider trading to me.
With that being said, that, we represent workers. So even during the pandemic, we had, some of our people got sick out here working, trying to get the goods in and out of the country. We had people who died. And guess what? Those foreign carriers made hundreds of billions of dollars. They took that money back to their country. So in my opinion, that's one of the problems with inflation. and I say on automations, machines don't pay taxes. Everybody can say what they want to, but they're not subject to what we do. So, I tell people, because this is my 35th year, come work on the docks and live in my shoes and see how you like it. So the average person can't do it because we miss birthdays, we miss wedding anniversaries, we miss all the normal things that people like Alabama game. We miss all of that because guess what? When a ship pull in, we here 24 hours, 7 days a week. So we working around the clock until that ship vessel finish. So selfish is not something that we're not. Matter of fact, we've made an ultimate commitment to the United States. That's to move commerce in and out of the country. So,
Kind of interesting when you think about it from the perspective of the employee on there, but that's exactly what unions do, is they make sure that the employees are compensated fairly, that they receive the package of benefits that should be a part of, the job. And then they talk about the working conditions. And one of the things that these longshoremen, I don't think that's a picture of the longshoremen, I can't remember, maybe it is. But one of the things they were talking about is the working conditions. The employers were wanting to bring in automation that would just totally eliminate their jobs. So this is part of the bargaining process too, to keep their jobs on it. But I got this, the diagrams out of your book on here, but it kind of shows the collective bargaining process. That's what I like because, you got unions. Typically it's whoever the union management is and stuff like that. And they're representing all of the employees and the union members. And then you got management, and they sit down and they start to negotiate. They negotiate the pay, the benefits, the workload, all of that kind of stuff. And rarely does it just, they both agree right away on that. And so what happens is, there's a little give and take on both sides, and then they go, typically, if they don't like it, they reject, and then they go back and rehash it and stuff. Well, sometimes when they can't get into any kind of a process of accommodating one another, things kind of blow up. And that one picture that we had was basically the longshoremen striking. That's probably the most thing that we were actually picketing. There's a big difference between picketing and striking. So when we talk about union tactics, that's why I put picketing above striking, because picketing means that they're still going to work. There are still people going to work, but there are other people on the picket line as such. Where strikes, that means they're just flat out not coming to work anymore. They're striking. Boycotting means not only are they not coming to work, but they're actively engaged in making sure that nobody buys what the company sells. So that's like taking it to the ultra level of that on there. So from that, management's got some tactics too. If management feels like they're just being bullied by the unions and such, well, the first thing that they're going to do is they just basically shut the company down. They just close the doors, and that's called a lockout when they do that. Or they got to keep the company running. The union members have all refused to come to work. They hire people to come in to work that are not union members, and that pisses the union members off. And in fact, they've got a term for those kind of people called scabs on there. And finally, one of the things that businesses and HR has to deal with is sexual harassment. This has probably been in the news frequently ever since the Me Too movement out there. The thing about sexual harassment is there's varying degrees, varying levels of it. And the stuff that we see in the news, the Harvey Weinsteins and the things like that, that's like the worst form of sexual harassment. But I guess the only thing that I want to kind of stress as far as for you guys to know is sexual harassment is any kind of harassment just based on a person's sex. It doesn't have to be about sex. That's the key. So therefore, sexual harassment does not have to be sexual in nature. It just is harassment based on the person's sex. Just making fun, oh, you throw like a girl, that could be sexual harassment if it was done in the context of, a business or something like that. So that's the key to kind of keeping that in mind. Sexual harassment does not have to be about sex. Okay, let's back here. And well, yeah, enough time. Look at this little thing about unions, and then we'll do a participation. Starbucks has been in the news lately about.
In a way, it ends where it begins.
Very insightful.
Thank you for sharing this, Red Baron, with the.
I started with Starbucks back in August of 2010. I am in the arts in the United States of America, and so I needed some way to get health benefits. And Starbucks was a company that had touted that they were very progressive, and one of the things that they offered was benefits for part-time employees. It was really the company it professed to be at the beginning of all of this, and unfortunately in the last few years we've started to see that slide, and so it was time to make some changes.
Across the U.S., the pandemic has spurred service workers to protest workplace conditions and fight for better treatment and wages. Some, like Michelle, have tried to form a union. In the United States, that can be a daunting task. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2021, 15.8 million wage and salary workers were represented by a union, with only 1.6% of members belonging to the food and drinking service industry.
I had made the decision after having worked through this pandemic for 1.5 years that I was done. I was tired, I was overwhelmed and overworked, and I was watching my coworkers struggle to pay their rent and put groceries in their fridge while working a full-time job. I'm certainly fighting this for myself, but I'm also fighting it for my coworkers and for future workers in the service industry.
This is Michelle Eisen. She's a theater artist, stage manager, and organizing member of Starbucks Workers United. After working for Starbucks locations in the Elmwood neighborhood of Buffalo and on the island of Oahu in Hawaii as a barista for 11 years and experiencing the perils of COVID-19, Michelle believes she was seeing a troubling shift in the company's culture.
The catalyst for where we are now certainly was the pandemic. We were called on to be essential workers in the middle of this pandemic and told that, it was essential for us to be there serving coffee to our communities. And on top of that, we were told that our company was making record-breaking profits in the middle of this pandemic. We have a CEO who's bragging about the level of profits that have been raked in by this company, and none of that is being passed down to the workers. And so that was the moment when we really sort of started to evaluate the company we worked for and who they professed to be, and realized that something had to change.
In August of 2021, a coworker approached Michelle, inviting her for a cup of coffee, and presented her with the idea of forming a union.
She went point by point and laid out sort of what had been happening around me, is that several baristas from several different stores in Buffalo had been talking, and they were as exhausted as I was and as overwhelmed and underappreciated, and had decided that things needed to change, and this looked like an option. And I said, okay, I'm on board. What do you need from me?
In August of 2021, Michelle got to work. She and other members of Starbucks Workers United prepared to file petitions with the National Labor Relations Board to hold union elections for 3 Starbucks locations in Buffalo. Once a union is recognized by the NLRB, a union contract or collective bargaining agreement is negotiated between workers and management. The contract sets forth the pay, benefits, policies, and working conditions at the company.
We filed the first 3 petitions August 30th, and from that point on, it has been nonstop corporate presence and interference in this campaign.
Starbucks, however, says there's a misconception around the idea that they're fighting unionization. Reggie Borres, the Director of Corporate Communications and Inclusivity and Diversity Communications, said, "We just don't believe a union is necessary at Starbucks." Once the union petitions were filed, Starbucks began sending executives to the Buffalo locations. Borres said that company leaders visit stores all the time to help and support employees, not to spy on or intimidate them.
They started showing up at these stores, particularly the ones that had filed petitions, saying they were only there to help. They were there totally coincidentally, and it just happened to fall, 3 days after these petitions filed. They also assigned what they called support managers. So they flew in other store managers from stores across the country, and they assigned them to all of these stores in Buffalo. What these support managers were actually assigned to was to surveil the workers at every possible moment. We've heard from store managers that are no longer with the company that they were told that workers were never to be left unattended. There was always supposed to be either a store manager or a support manager on the floor to break up any conversation that might arise about the union. It was scary for my coworkers to feel like their every move was being watched. Nobody wants to come into their workplace every day and feel like they're being watched.
Despite a corporate executive presence, Starbucks Workers United pressed forward to a historic victory.
Winning the first union Starbucks in the country, which we did on December 9th, was amazing. To be able to stand there with my coworkers and be the first one to do that was fantastic.
The movement of unionization for Starbucks locations has grown since the Elmwood December 9th win.
I believe we were in 27 states and had 103 petitions filed. Today, we were here in Buffalo for what was going to be the next vote count for 3 other additional stores that had filed union petitions back in November.
But that vote count for those additional stores never happened due to what union advocates said was a deliberate anti-union strategy by Starbucks. An announcement from the NLRB stated that the votes would be impounded because of a request for review filed by Starbucks. Under the Trump administration, the NLRB allowed either party, company, or employee to request review of petitions if the request is filed within 10 business days of the decision. Starbucks made their request on the 10th day. Ian Hayes, the workers' attorney, spoke at a press conference about this decision.
Starbucks knows what it's doing. Starbucks attorneys know what they're doing. They were gaming the system to try to delay the process, break the workers' momentum, just like they have been for the last half year. And this right here is what union busting looks like in the United States in 2022.
Boris stated that Starbucks is simply adhering to the NLRB's due process. Nothing is being done deliberately to delay or slow down the vote count.
So these workers, yet again, who had worked so hard to get to this point, had their voices silenced. It's unfortunately what had happened in Mesa last week. I flew out to Mesa to support that store, and we had to go through the exact same thing right before their vote count. It is another delay tactic after delay tactic after delay tactic that the company has employed.
Public support from members of government have pushed the workers to continue their fight.
I think we're looking at a new frontier in the labor movement in this country.
During the pandemic, a moment called Striketober sparked an influx of protests. From Deere & Company's factories, Kellogg's U.S. plants, to nurses in Massachusetts and distillery workers in Kentucky, tens of thousands of union workers across a variety of industries were either on strike or close to it. However, despite ongoing activism, the rate of union membership is down from previous years. The Bureau of Labor Statistics notes that the rate of union membership was 10.3% in 2021 and is equivalent to pre-pandemic levels of 2019.
I think that our laws are a little bit behind, unfortunately, and we're going to have to reform them and adjust them if we want to see this labor movement really take off. And I think that the NLRB is on board with that. I think that they also want to be the agency that protects the worker. So we're just waiting for everything to sort of catch up with our movement. I think what's kept me fighting this fight is knowing that I'm on the right side of history.
And Starbucks is, they try to keep people from unionizing and.
Hey, friend.
All right, let's do the participation. Test opens up at midnight tonight, closes at 11:59 p.m. on Thursday night, and next Tuesday we start. Waylon, why don't you move back to the back here to take yours, okay? You should follow this. Because you do that on the test, I believe. All right, so took good notes. You should. Guess I didn't open it up. There we go. And remember, Thursday's test day, so I don't expect to see anybody here.